The crystal caves of Xerion Prime had become a tomb. What once echoed with the mighty roars of the last dragon clan now held only the whisper of recycled air and the steady drip of condensation from the artificial atmosphere generators. The Galactic Council's forces had finally cornered Zephyros, the last of the ancient star dragons, in these remote mining tunnels on the edge of civilized space. Zephyros lay sprawled across the cavern floor, his once magnificent scales now dulled to a sickly gray. Each breath came with tremendous effort, sending small puffs of what remained of his inner fire into the cold air. The dragon's eyes, once bright as twin suns, had faded to the color of dying embers. Around him, the walls bore the scars of his final battle, deep gouges where his claws had raked stone, melted patches where his breath had tried one last time to burn away his enemies. The bounty hunters had left him here to die slowly. It was more profitable that way. Dragon scales and organs fetched higher prices when harvested from a recently deceased specimen rather than battle-damaged remains. So they waited outside the cave system, scanning equipment, monitoring his vital signs, ready to move in the moment his great heart finally stopped beating. Zephyros had lived for over 3,000 years. He remembered when his kind ruled the space lanes, when merchant ships would detour light years just to avoid a dragon's territory. He remembered the great cities his ancestors had built in the hearts of stars themselves, powered by dragon fire that could burn for millennia. He remembered the songs his mother had taught him, the ancient melodies that could bend reality itself, could heal wounds or tear holes in the fabric of space-time. But those days were long gone. The galaxy had grown smaller, more crowded. Technology had advanced beyond magic, and there was no room left for creatures like him. The Galactic Council had declared his species a threat to interstellar commerce. One by one, his brothers and sisters had fallen to corporate armies and government fleets. Zephyros alone had survived, running from system to system, hiding in asteroid fields and dead worlds, watching helplessly as the last fragments of dragon civilization were sold at auction to collectors and museums. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the tunnel system. Zephyros lifted his massive head slightly, preparing for the end. The bounty hunters had grown impatient. Or perhaps their sensors had detected his failing condition. Either way, his time had run out. But the footsteps were too light, too irregular. Instead of the heavy boots of armored hunters, Zephyros heard the soft padding of someone trying very hard to move quietly. A child, perhaps. What would a young one be doing in these forsaken tunnels? The footsteps stopped at the entrance to his chamber. Zephyros could sense fear radiating from the unseen visitor, but also something else. Curiosity, and beneath that, a strange sort of determination that reminded him of young dragons he had known centuries ago. A small figure stepped into the dim light cast by the dragon's fading fire. It was indeed a child, a human boy no more than 12 years old. His dark hair was tousled and dirty, his clothes torn and stained from crawling through the rough tunnels. But his eyes were bright with intelligence and something that might have been recognition. "You're Zephyros," the boy said quietly, not really asking. "The last dragon?" Zephyros studied the child with growing surprise. Humans were common throughout the galaxy now, but they rarely ventured to places like this. And how did this one know his name? That information wasn't exactly public knowledge. "I am," the dragon replied, his voice a low rumble that seemed to come from deep within the stone itself. Speaking took enormous effort, but he was curious about this unexpected visitor. "And you are very far from home, young human." The boy took a few cautious steps closer. "My name is Marcus. My ship crashed 3 days ago during a transport run. I've been hiding in these caves ever since." "From the bounty hunters?" Marcus nodded. "They killed everyone else on my ship. My parents, the crew, everyone." I managed to get to an escape pod, but it didn't take me far." His voice cracked slightly, but he continued with admirable composure. "I heard them talking on their comm channels. They said they were waiting for the last dragon to die so they could claim their reward." Zephyros felt something stir within his chest. Not his dying fire, but something else. Anger, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit. This boy was as alone in the galaxy as he was, another survivor of senseless violence. "I am sorry for your loss, Marcus," the dragon said gently. "But you should leave this place. When I die, they will come, and they will not be kind to witnesses." Instead of fleeing, Marcus sat down on a nearby rock formation, settling in as if he intended to stay. "I know about dragons," he said unexpectedly. "My grandmother used to tell me stories. She said her grandmother had actually met one, back before the wars. She taught me some of the old songs." Zephyros's eyes widened slightly. The old songs were nearly lost knowledge, passed down through only a few human families who had maintained contact with dragons in the ancient days. Most humans had forgotten that such connections had ever existed. "Your grandmother was wise to preserve such knowledge," Zephyros said, "though I fear it will die with both of us in this place." Marcus looked up at him with surprising intensity. "It doesn't have to. The songs my grandmother taught me, she said they could heal. She said dragon magic wasn't really magic at all, just a way of understanding the harmonic frequencies that hold the universe together." Despite his pain and exhaustion, Zephyros found himself intrigued. The boy's grandmother had understood more than most scholars about the true nature of dragon abilities. The songs weren't mere entertainment. They were complex mathematical equations expressed as melody, ways of manipulating the quantum fields that underlay all matter and energy. "The healing songs are among the most difficult," Zephyros explained patiently. "They require perfect pitch and complete understanding of the harmonic relationships involved. Even among dragons, few could master them properly." Marcus stood up, brushing dust from his clothes. "My grandmother said I had the gift. She made me practice for hours every day until I got the frequencies exactly right." He paused, looking directly into the dragon's fading eyes. "She said someday I might meet a dragon who needed help." Something in the boy's voice made Zephyros pay closer attention. There was certainty there, a quiet confidence that spoke of hidden depths. "Show me," the dragon said simply. Marcus moved closer until he was standing within arm's reach of Zephyros's great head. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing. The melody that emerged was unlike anything Zephyros had heard in centuries. The boy's voice was clear and pure, but more than that, it was precise. Every note hit the exact frequency needed, every interval calculated to resonate with the quantum harmonics that governed cellular regeneration. This wasn't just singing, it was a form of applied physics that most scientists couldn't comprehend, let alone perform. But there was something wrong. The song Marcus sang wasn't one of the healing melodies Zephyros knew. The harmonic structure was similar, but the frequencies were different, more complex. As the boy continued to sing, Zephyros realized with growing amazement what he was hearing. This was one of the forbidden songs, the melodies that had been banned by the Dragon Council itself millennia ago, deemed too dangerous for regular use. Songs that didn't just heal injury or cure disease, but actually reversed entropy itself, unwound the flow of time at a cellular level, restored not just health but youth and vitality. The song grew stronger as Marcus found his rhythm. The boy's voice seemed to fill the entire cavern, resonating through stone and crystal, creating harmonics that made the air itself shimmer with barely visible energy. Zephyros felt warmth beginning to return to his extremities, felt his heart's beating with renewed strength. "Stop," Zephyros whispered. but his voice was lost in the melody's power. He tried again, louder. "Child, you must stop. That song is forbidden." But Marcus continued singing, and the dragon found himself caught in the song's embrace. His scales began to regain their luster, shifting from dull gray back to their original deep blue-black. His wounds started to close, flesh knitting back together as if the injuries had never occurred. Most remarkably of all, he felt years falling away from him, the accumulated weight of centuries lifting from his consciousness. The song reached its crescendo, and Marcus's voice soared into frequencies that should have been impossible for human vocal cords to produce. For a moment, the entire cavern filled with light as bright as a star's core. Then the melody ended, and silence returned to the crystal caves. Zephyros stood, his movements fluid and powerful once again. He looked down at Marcus, who had collapsed to his knees from the effort of the song. The boy was pale and shaking, but alive. "How?" Zephyros asked quietly. "How did you know that melody? It was lost before your species even left their homeworld." Marcus looked up at him with exhausted but triumphant eyes. "My grandmother didn't just preserve the healing songs, she preserved everything. Her family had been the guardians of dragon knowledge for over 1,000 years, passing it down in secret even after the wars began." The dragon felt a mixture of awe and terror as he contemplated the implications. If this child's family had preserved the forbidden songs, then they possessed knowledge that could reshape the galaxy. Knowledge that both dragons and humans had assumed was lost forever. Outside the cavern, alarms began to sound. The bounty hunters had detected the energy surge from the forbidden song. They would be coming soon, and they would not be expecting to find a fully restored dragon waiting for them. Zephyros looked down at Marcus with new respect and growing affection. This brave young human had not only saved his life, but had also given him something he thought he had lost forever: hope for the future. "We need to leave this place," Zephyros said, extending one great wing to shelter the boy. "But first, tell me, what other songs do you know?" Marcus smiled weakly as he struggled to his feet. "All of them. Every song the dragons ever sang. My family has been waiting generations for someone who could use them properly." The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the tunnels, growing closer. Zephyros felt his newly restored power flowing through his veins like liquid fire. After centuries of running and hiding, he was ready to fight back. "Then perhaps it is time the galaxy remembered why dragons were once feared and respected," he said, his voice carrying the promise of retribution. "And why humanity should never be underestimated." The footsteps were getting closer now, accompanied by the whine of charging weapons and the mechanical hum of battle armor. Marcus moved to stand beside his unlikely ally, no longer the frightened refugee who had stumbled into the cavern, but someone who had found his purpose. "Together?" the boy asked simply. "Together," Zephyros agreed, and for the first time in centuries he smiled. The first bounty hunter to round the corner into Zephyros's cavern barely had time to register what he was seeing before dragonfire turned his advanced combat armor into molten slag. The man's scream echoed briefly through the crystal tunnels before being cut short by the intense heat. "Impossible!" came a voice from the tunnel entrance. The dragon was dying. Our sensors confirmed it. Zephyros positioned himself protectively over Marcus, his massive form casting dancing shadows on the cavern walls in the light of his rekindled flame. "Your sensors were correct," he called back to the hidden hunters. "I was dying. But death is not always permanent. As you are about to discover." More figures appeared at the tunnel mouth. 6 heavily armed mercenaries in full combat gear, energy weapons powered and ready. Their leader, a scarred woman with cybernetic implants covering half her face, stepped forward with her plasma rifle trained on the dragon. "Captain Vera Cross," she announced, as if her name should mean something. You're worth more alive than dead, dragon, but I'll settle for either. Surrender now, and we'll make it quick." "I have a better proposal," Zephyros replied calmly. "Leave now, and I will allow you to keep your lives." Captain Cross laughed harshly. "One dragon against 6 armed professionals? Even if you weren't half dead already, those odds aren't in your favor." "You are correct," Zephyros agreed. "The odds are not in your favor at all." He reared back and unleashed a torrent of dragon fire that forced the hunters to dive for cover behind the rocky walls of the tunnel. But this wasn't the weak flame of a dying creature. This was the full fury of a star dragon in his prime, hot enough to melt steel and turn stone to glass. While the hunters scrambled to avoid being roasted alive, Marcus began to sing again. This time it wasn't a healing song, but something else entirely. A melody that seemed to bend the very air around them. The quantum harmonics of his voice created pockets of altered gravity, making some of the hunters suddenly weigh 3 times their normal amount, while others found themselves floating helplessly near the ceiling. "What is that kid doing?" one of the mercenaries shouted as he struggled against the invisible forces pinning him to the ground. "Impossible," Captain Cross muttered, her cybernetic eye glowing as it tried to analyze the phenomenon. "Human voices can't generate those frequencies." "Human voices can't," Zephyros agreed, breathing another stream of fire that melted the tunnel wall inches from her head. "But this is no ordinary human." Marcus's song shifted to a different harmonic pattern, and suddenly the hunters found their weapons refusing to function properly. Energy rifles sputtered and died, plasma charges fizzled out before they could form, and even their basic projectile weapons jammed as the molecular bonds in their ammunition became unstable. Captain Cross, being the professional she was, immediately recognized when a situation had become untenable. "Fall back!" she ordered her team. "Regroup at the surface!" But Zephyros had no intention of letting them escape to warn others. With powerful beats of his restored wings, he launched himself through the tunnel system, moving with the fluid grace that had once made dragons the terror of the space lanes. His massive form shouldn't have been able to navigate the narrow passages, but dragon anatomy was more flexible than most people realized. He caught 3 of the fleeing hunters before they reached the cavern exit, his claws ending their careers with swift efficiency. The remaining 3, including Captain Cross, made it to the surface where their ship waited, but they found their escape route blocked by something they hadn't expected. The bounty hunter's vessel, a sleek Predator-class fighter designed for tracking dangerous quarry, sat dead on the rocky ground of Xerion Prime. Its engines were cold, its weapons powered down, and its communications array had been systematically dismantled. Standing beside the disabled ship was another figure, an elderly woman with silver hair and keen eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "Grandmother Elena," Marcus called out joyfully as he and Zephyros emerged from the cave system. "You came?" The old woman smiled warmly at her grandson before turning a considerably less friendly gaze on the surviving bounty hunters. "Of course I came, dear one. Did you think I would let you face this alone?" Captain Cross raised her sidearm, one of the few weapons that still functioned after Marcus's song. "I don't know who you are, lady, but you just made a very expensive mistake. That ship represents our livelihood." "Your ship is the least of your concerns," Elena replied calmly. She began to hum a simple tune under her breath, something that sounded almost like a lullaby. The effect on the bounty hunters was immediate and dramatic. Their weapons became impossibly heavy, their limbs moved as if through thick liquid, and their thoughts grew sluggish and confused. "Sleep song," Zephyros observed with approval. "Elegantly done." The 3 remaining hunters collapsed to the ground in seconds, their bodies overwhelmed by an irresistible urge to sleep. They would wake in a few hours with no memory of the past day and a compelling desire to find new careers in less violent professions. "We should move quickly," Elena said as she embraced her grandson. Word of what happened here will spread, despite our precautions. The Galactic Council will send more than just bounty hunters next time. Zephyros nodded gravely. Where can we go? My kind has no safe harbors left in civilized space. Elena smiled mysteriously. Who said anything about civilized space? There are places beyond the rim where neither the Council nor their corporate allies dare to venture. Places where the old knowledge is still remembered and respected. She led them to a ship hidden in a nearby crater. Not the sleek, mass-produced vessel Marcus had expected, but something far more interesting. The ship was clearly ancient, its hull bearing inscriptions in a script that predated most known civilizations. But despite its age, it radiated power and purpose. "This is a song ship," Zephyros breathed in amazement. "I thought they were all destroyed." "The last one," Elena confirmed. "Built by the combined efforts of dragons and humans working together, before fear and politics drove our peoples apart. It responds not to technology, but to the harmonic frequencies we've preserved." As they boarded the vessel, Elena began to explain the true scope of what her family had been protecting for generations. The songs Marcus had learned were only the beginning. There were entire libraries of harmonic knowledge preserved in hidden archives throughout the galaxy, waiting for the day when they could safely be revealed again. The Dragon Purge wasn't really about eliminating a threat to commerce, she told them as the ship's ancient engines came to life in response to her sung commands. It was about suppressing knowledge that could make the current power structures obsolete, energy that costs nothing to produce, healing that requires no technology, transportation that ignores the limitations of physics as currently understood. Zephyros settled into the ship's cargo bay, which had been specifically designed to accommodate passengers of his size. The Council has always feared anything they couldn't control or tax. Exactly. But now we have something they fear even more. Proof that dragons and humans can work together. Marcus isn't just a human who knows dragon songs. He's something new, a bridge between our species. As they traveled deeper into uncharted space, Elena revealed the true scope of the resistance that had been building for generations. Hidden colonies on forgotten worlds, ancient technologies preserved by secretive scholars, and most importantly, other survivors, both dragon and human, who had been working toward this moment. Their destination was a world that existed in no official star charts, a planet where the last free dragons had built a new kind of civilization. Not the dominating empire their ancestors had ruled, but a partnership between species based on shared knowledge and mutual respect. "Welcome to Haven," Elena announced, as their ship dropped out of hyperspace above a blue-green world that sparkled with impossible beauty. From the surface came a response, not radio signals or digital transmissions, but a harmony of voices singing in perfect unison. Dragons and humans together, their combined songs creating a welcome that could be felt as much as heard. Marcus looked out at the approaching planet with wonder in his eyes. "How many are there?" "Enough," Elena replied. "And growing. Every year, more people discover the truth about what really happened during the Dragon Wars. More refugees find their way to us. More of the old knowledge is recovered." As their ship descended through the atmosphere, Zephyros could see the cities below, not the sterile metal structures that dominated most inhabited worlds, but living buildings that grew from the planet itself, shaped by sung commands and sustained by harmonic resonance. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now we prepare," Elena said firmly. "The Council will eventually discover this place. They always do. But when they come, they won't find a handful of isolated refugees hiding from their justice. They'll find a civilization that remembers what the galaxy was like before fear replaced wonder." The ship touched down in a landing field that was actually a vast amphitheater, its curved walls designed to amplify and focus sound. Hundreds of figures, both human and dragon, had gathered to welcome the newcomers. Their songs of greeting filled the air with harmonies that made the very ground beneath their feet vibrate with power. Zephyros stepped off the ship and felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. He was no longer the last dragon. Here were others of his kind, not hiding in remote caves, but living openly, working alongside their human partners to build something new. A massive red dragon approached them, her scales gleaming with health and vitality. "Brother Zephyros," she said formally, "we have waited long for your arrival." "Sister Piritha," Zephyros replied, recognizing her despite the centuries that had passed. "I thought you were dead." "As I thought of you. Many of us are here. Survivors from the Purge, dragons born in exile, even a few who were thought lost forever. The galaxy believes we are extinct, which gives us a considerable advantage." Marcus looked around in amazement at the thriving community surrounding them. Children of both species played together in the gardens that surrounded the landing area, their laughter mixing with the constant background harmony of the settlement's working songs. "This is what we're really fighting for," Elena explained. "Not just survival, but the chance to build something better than what came before. A galaxy where knowledge is shared freely, where cooperation replaces domination, where the old songs can be sung without fear." As they walked toward the city center, Marcus began to understand the true scope of what his family had preserved. The forbidden songs weren't just powerful tools. They were the foundation of an entirely different way of life. A way that threatened the established order not through violence or conquest, but through the simple demonstration that better alternatives were possible. "The council will come eventually," Zephyros observed. "Yes," Elena agreed, "but when they do, we'll be ready. And more importantly, the galaxy will be ready to hear what we have to offer." The sun was setting over Haven as they reached the heart of the settlement. In the gathering twilight, the evening song began, a harmony so complex and beautiful that it seemed to make the stars themselves shine brighter in response. Marcus added his voice to the chorus, and Zephyros felt his heart swell with pride and hope. The boys' clear tones blended perfectly with the ensemble, adding new harmonic layers that no one had thought to try before. The last dragon was no longer alone, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months after Marcus first sang to save Zephyros's life, the Galactic Council's greatest fear became reality. Word of Haven had spread beyond their ability to contain it, carried by merchants, refugees, and even defectors from their own ranks, who had grown tired of enforcing laws they no longer believed in. The discovery came when a council survey ship, investigating reports of illegal mining operations in the Outer Rim, detected impossible energy readings from a supposedly uninhabited system. The expedition that followed found not empty worlds ripe for exploitation, but a thriving civilization that challenged everything the Council claimed to represent. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the GCS Absolute Authority, studying the tactical displays that showed Haven hanging in space like a jewel of defiance. As the Council's most experienced military commander, she had overseen the suppression of dozens of rebellions and the pacification of entire star systems. But she had never faced anything quite like this. "Preliminary scans confirm the intelligence reports," her tactical officer announced. "Population estimated at over 2 million beings, split roughly evenly between humans and dragons. Energy signatures indicate technology far beyond current council standards, but based on unknown principles." Chen nodded grimly. "Any response to our hail?" "They're responding, Admiral. Audio only. Wide broadcast to the entire fleet." The voice that emerged from the communications array was warm and distinctly human, but there was something else beneath it. Harmonics that seemed to resonate in the listener's bones, making the speaker's words feel more important somehow. "Welcome to Haven, Admiral Chen. I am Elena Martinez, speaker for the Council of Harmony. We've been expecting you. You have illegal weapons and are harboring fugitives from council justice, Chen replied formally. Surrender now, and your people will be treated according to interstellar law. Elena's laugh was musical, almost like a song itself. Admiral, the only law we recognize here is the law of harmony, the principle that cooperation and understanding serve everyone better than dominance and fear. We invite you to observe our civilization and judge for yourself whether we represent a threat that needs suppression or a hope that deserves protection. Chen had dealt with rebels before, but none had ever invited her to inspect their operations. It was clearly some sort of trap, but her curiosity was piqued despite her professional caution. I'll send down a diplomatic team to negotiate your surrender. Send anyone you wish, Admiral. But understand that anyone who sets foot on Haven will hear the truth about what the Council has been hiding from the galaxy. Some truths change people. The transmission ended, leaving Chen staring at displays that showed a world unlike anything in Council space. No defensive installations, no military preparations, no signs that the inhabitants were even concerned about the massive fleet surrounding their planet. Either they were incredibly naive, or they possessed capabilities that her sensors couldn't detect. 6 hours later, Chen found herself in a landing shuttle with her senior staff, descending toward a planet that defied every assumption she had made about rebel colonies. The cities below were beautiful beyond description, living architecture that seemed to grow from the landscape itself, transportation networks that moved without visible infrastructure, energy sources that produced no waste or pollution. Their shuttle landed in the same amphitheater where Zephyros had first arrived, now expanded to accommodate the much larger council delegation. Thousands of humans and dragons had gathered to witness the encounter, but there was no hostility in their behavior. If anything, they seemed genuinely curious about their visitors. Elena Martinez was there to greet them, accompanied by Marcus, now 3 months older and more confident than the frightened refugee who had crawled through crystal caves to find a dying dragon. Beside them stood Zephyros himself, his magnificence fully restored, and a dozen other dragons whose very existence contradicted everything the Council had told the galaxy about the success of their extermination campaigns. Admiral, Elena said formally, welcome to Haven. We hope your visit will be educational. Chen's hand rested on her sidearm, but she made no move to draw it. The situation was too strange, too unprecedented for standard military protocols. I'm here to take custody of wanted fugitives and investigate violations of interstellar law. And we're here to show you why those laws are wrong, Marcus said unexpectedly. The boy stepped forward with none of the deference Chen had come to expect from conquered populations. Would you like to see what the Council has been so afraid of? Before Chen could respond, Marcus began to sing. The melody was simple at first, almost childlike in its innocence, but as other voices joined in, the song became something magnificent. The ground beneath their feet resonated with harmony. The air itself seemed to shimmer with possibility. And Chen felt something she hadn't experienced in decades, genuine wonder. The song demonstrated healing first, as volunteers from the crowd stepped forward with various injuries and illnesses. A man with a withered arm watched in amazement as his limb regenerated, muscle and bone rebuilding themselves in perfect harmony with the melody. A woman blinded in an industrial accident gasped as her sight returned, tears of joy streaming down her face. Children born with genetic defects were made whole, their DNA restructured by harmonics that understood life at its most fundamental level. But the demonstration didn't stop with healing. As the song continued, the very landscape around them began to change. Barren ground sprouted with lush vegetation, dry creek beds filled with fresh water, and the air itself became cleaner and more breathable. This wasn't just medicine. It was creation itself responding to conscious intention. "How?" Chen whispered, her military training warring with the evidence of her own eyes. "The universe is music," Zephyros explained, his voice adding bass harmonies to the ongoing song. Matter and energy dancing to frequencies that most people can't hear anymore. The dragons knew this once, and we taught it to humans who were willing to listen. The Council's ancestors chose to forget, to rely on machines and violence instead of understanding and cooperation. The song reached a crescendo, and something impossible happened. The very space around them began to fold and twist, creating temporary gateways to other worlds. Through these portals, Chen could see other human colonies, other dragon communities, all connected by networks of harmony that spanned the galaxy. "This is why we had to be eliminated," Elena said as the song gradually faded. "Not because we were a threat to commerce, but because we represented a different way of thinking about existence itself, a way that makes the Council's power structures obsolete." Chen looked around at her senior staff and saw the same stunned recognition in their eyes that she felt in her own heart. Everything they had been told, everything they had fought to defend, had been built on lies and deliberate ignorance. "The Council will never accept this," her chief of staff said quietly. "They'll fight to preserve their power." "We know," Marcus replied sadly. "That's why we've been preparing." As if summoned by his words, the sky above Haven filled with new arrivals, not council ships, but vessels of designs Chen had never seen before. Organic curves that suggested growth rather than manufacture, hulls that seemed to sing with their own inner light, and sizes that ranged from personal transports to city-sized constructs that defied conventional understanding of how spaceships should work. "The hidden fleets," Elena explained. "Dragons and humans working together for generations, building ships that respond to harmony rather than technology. We've been gathering our strength while the Council believed they had won." Chen felt her tactical training taking over, automatically cataloging the new arrivals as potential threats. But as she watched, she realized that these vessels weren't positioning themselves for attack. Instead, they were creating a complex three-dimensional formation around her fleet, one that seemed designed more for protection than aggression. "What do you want from us?" Chen asked finally. "The same thing we've always wanted," Zephyros replied. "The freedom to exist, to grow, to share what we've learned with anyone willing to listen. We're not asking you to abandon your ships or your crews. We're asking you to consider whether the galaxy might be better served by harmony than by force." As if to demonstrate the point, the combined fleets began to sing. Not with voices this time, but with the harmonic resonance of their hulls, their engines, their very structure vibrating in perfect musical coordination. The song that emerged was unlike anything in Chen's experience, a symphony of space itself, with each vessel contributing its own unique voice to a composition of breathtaking beauty and complexity. "Join us," Elena said simply. "Help us build something better than what came before. Your people don't have to be soldiers for a system that fears truth. They could be explorers of possibility instead." Chen looked at her officers and saw doubt where there had once been certainty, questions where there had been orders. The music was affecting them all, not by forcing their thoughts, but by opening their minds to alternatives they had never considered. "The Council will brand us traitors," her navigator pointed out. "The Council brands anyone a traitor who threatens their monopoly on power," Marcus replied. "But the galaxy is bigger than the Council and getting bigger every day. There are entire sectors now where their authority means nothing, where people have learned to sing the old songs and build the new cities." Over the following days, Chen found herself exploring Haven with growing amazement. She saw schools where human and dragon children learned together, not just subjects like mathematics and history, but the deep harmonies that underlay reality itself. She visited hospitals where healing was accomplished through song rather than surgery, workshops where useful objects were grown rather than manufactured, and research centers where the boundaries between science and art had dissolved entirely. Most remarkably, she met with the Council of Harmony that governed Haven, not through dominance or bureaucracy, but through a consensus-building process that used musical harmonics to ensure that all voices were heard and all perspectives considered. "This can't last," she told Elena during one of their conversations. "The Council has resources you can't match. They'll gather a bigger fleet, more powerful weapons. They'll find a way to destroy this place." "Perhaps," Elena agreed, "but they can't destroy the knowledge itself. Every world that hears our songs learns to sing new ones. Every person who experiences healing through harmony becomes a teacher for others. The Council can win battles, but the war for the soul of the galaxy is already over." When Chen finally returned to her ship a week later, she faced the most difficult decision of her career. Her orders were clear: pacify the rebel colony and arrest its leaders. But her conscience was equally clear about what she had witnessed on Haven. She stood on the bridge of the absolute authority, looking down at a world that represented everything the galaxy could become if it chose cooperation over domination. Around her, the crew waited for orders that would either condemn them as traitors or mark them as the first to choose a different path. "Open a channel to the fleet," Chen said finally. "All ships, all frequencies." When the connection was established, she took a deep breath and spoke words that would change the course of galactic history. "This is Admiral Chen. After careful investigation, I have determined that the colony known as Haven poses no threat to interstellar peace or security. Furthermore, I have discovered evidence that our previous understanding of the dragon situation was based on incomplete information." She paused, knowing that her next words would make her a fugitive from the very government she had served for decades. "Effective immediately, I am resigning my commission and requesting asylum with the Council of Harmony. Any crew members who wish to return to Council space will be provided with transport. Those who choose to stay will be welcomed as citizens of a new kind of civilization." The response was immediate and electric. Some ships began powering their weapons, preparing to force compliance with Council directives, but others followed Chen's lead, their crews making the same choice to abandon old loyalties in favor of new possibilities. What followed was not a battle, but a transformation. The ships that chose to stay found themselves gradually changed by prolonged exposure to the harmonic technologies of Haven. Their crews learned to sing, their vessels learned to resonate, and their understanding of what was possible expanded beyond all previous limits. 6 months later, when the next Council fleet arrived to investigate the disappearance of Admiral Chen's expedition, they found something that challenged every assumption about military conquest. Instead of a defeated colony or a destroyed world, they discovered a thriving civilization that had grown to encompass 3 star systems and included technology that made Council weapons look like primitive tools. The war that followed was unlike any conflict in galactic history. It was fought not with weapons and soldiers, but with songs and ideas. Every world that heard the harmonies of Haven had to choose between the rigid control of the Council and the creative freedom of the new way. Some chose to fight for their old masters, but many more chose to sing. Marcus, now a teenager and one of Haven's most gifted harmony teachers, often reflected on the moment when he had first encountered a dying dragon in a crystal cave. That single act of compassion, that decision to sing a forbidden song, had set in motion changes that touched every corner of the galaxy. Zephyros, no longer the last dragon but one of many, working to rebuild their ancient culture in partnership with humanity, had become a symbol of hope for all those who had been written off as extinct or irrelevant. Together, they had proven that the future belonged not to those with the most powerful weapons, but to those with the most beautiful dreams. And throughout the galaxy, in hidden colonies and secret schools, in the depths of space and the hearts of stars, the old songs lived again, promising a tomorrow where harmony would replace discord, where cooperation would triumph over domination, and where the music of the spheres would guide all sentient beings toward their greatest possible destiny.